Good afternoon, and welcome to the Ohio Summit on Wrongful Convictions. We are going to kick things off with a brief introductory remark from our elected county prosecutor, Michael O'Malley.
Good afternoon and welcome to Cleveland. Weather is about par for the course and hopefully doesn't start raining in the next hour. I just want to welcome you here to this very important summit. My name is Michael O'Malley. I was elected Cuyahoga County Prosecutor 2 years ago. And upon my election, one of the big issues during the course of my election, I was running against an incumbent, was this issue of wrongful conviction. And meeting with people in the community, it became clear that there was an overall desire within our community for criminal justice reform. And part of that reform needed to be a conviction integrity unit in our county that was actually working. My predecessor had formed a conviction integrity unit, but the investigations and the determinations were not as prompt as those who were incarcerated and felt they were wrongfully convicted would have liked. And it was a priority to me that we step up the progress on those important issues and move those cases forward. And one of the first acts I did was to hire a criminal defense attorney as my criminal division chief. Russell Ty, can you please stand up, Russ? Russ is he is a former Lake County prosecutor and criminal division chief in my office, and he's also head of the conviction integrity unit. And we really emphasized the issue on making prosecutors do what's right at all phases of our criminal justice process. Whether it's post-indictment, whether it's during the middle of a trial, whether it's between conviction and sentencing. And the last year and a half, we've had all of that. And it's due to the work of Russ and his staff that we are able to accomplish what we have accomplished within our own unit. We've had individuals freed. Evan King, who served nearly 23 years in prison, was freed this past summer. Darius Irby, an individual who was convicted, but we overturned his conviction and vacated it prior to sentencing. Another individual with those same facts, Deontay Wilson. Another individual that many of you here may know is Ruel Saleh. He served 15 years. He's also been released. And finally, several months ago, an individual by the name of Chris Miller. After work with the Innocence Project, additional DNA testing, his case conviction was also overturned and it was vacated. Every one of those individuals was finally given an opportunity to present their case and had a conviction integrity unit that was willing to listen. And I know within our own community, it's brought us a great deal of satisfaction that we have within our office that unit that is actually hearing people. And when we work with the Innocence Project, and I see Mark out there, we try to be fair, understanding, and give every case a very serious look and consideration. And it's through our work with the Innocence Project, getting additional DNA testing done, that has led to some of these convictions being overturned. But while I'm here, I also want to acknowledge a few other people who've been so important in this movement. Certainly Mark has been on a statewide level, but within our own community, Carmen Naso. Where's Carmen? Carmen is an individual who was also a former county prosecutor in Cuyahoga County, but also has the mentality of we need to do what's right for these individuals who are convicted. And again, I want to thank Carmen. I used to work with Carmen for probably a decade in the office, and his partnership with our office is very valuable to me, and I just want to thank Carmen. One other individual, when I came into the office, some of the difficulties that I was facing was that I had heard from criminal defense attorneys within our community that as they were working to get additional testing done on evidence from convictions from years ago, that there was pushback from the office. And there was pushback from the the appellate unit within our office as to seeking additional testing on evidence from previous convictions. I hired an individual by the name of Kristen Sobieski. Kristen is head of my appellate unit, and she works hand in hand with the Innocence Project, determining what evidence is outcome determinative so that we can get that evidence tested. That was the key in the Chris Miller case, again, which has led to an individual being freed. Again, my mantra to my employees is very simple. Just always do what's right. And with those marching orders, I think within Cuyahoga County, we've significantly improved the criminal justice system. I think we have a ways to go. Working with Administrative Judge John Russo, we work in a partnership. We're looking at bail reform. We're looking at other ways to improve the system. And again, with the goal of doing what's right, I anticipate our system will continue to improve and will continue to move forward. And it's a pleasure to welcome you all here to Cuyahoga County today. I want to thank Chief Justice O'Connor for being here. I think her presence says a lot about the importance of this movement. And again, I just want to welcome you, Cleveland. Hopefully the weather stays decent, and have a good time, and I hope you learn a lot. Thank you.
Our next greeter is one of our co-deans at Case Western Reserve University Law School, Michael Scharf.
Thank you, Carmen. I'm going to be extremely brief, but I did want, as co-dean of the law school and host of this event, to welcome all of you who are not from Cleveland to Cleveland and who are not from the University Circle area to University Circle. And those of you who are here frequently, welcome back. So first of all, let me thank Prosecutor Michael O'Malley for kicking things off and recognizing Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor for being here, and some of the other great speakers that we have today, Mark Godsey, Russell Ty, Patricia Cummings. You're in for some really, really good remarks. This is a really important topic for our law school. And about 10 years ago, Carmen and his colleagues kicked off what is now known as our post-conviction clinic. And they have worked on Innocence Project cases. They have worked on a number of cases and successfully had people who had been convicted and served many years in prison now walk free and become rehabilitated citizens, and in some cases, people who are integrated into our academic community. We also have a death penalty lab that is a special course that is offered by Mike Benza, one of our professors, in which we work to argue appellate briefs and amicus briefs in death penalty cases. We, as a law school, are currently ranked 8th in the nation in public interest law, and a lot of that has to do with the opportunities we have in our clinics, including those that are involved in the Innocence Project. So we are very, very pleased to be able to be the location for the first, and I hope, annual summit on wrongful convictions, and I welcome everybody and wish you a very productive time here. Thank you. Who's next? I told you I was going to be brief. There you go.
Thank you. The least recognizable person gets no introduction here. Thank you. So I'll introduce myself. Saleh Awadallah. I'm an assistant county prosecutor. Been a prosecutor for 20 plus years in our county here, the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. Served under, this is my 4th prosecuting attorney, and got about 12 more years left to go, hopefully. Now, I was asked here to maybe introduce Mr. Williams and maybe set the stage for him. As an assistant prosecutor, I would say there's really no dull day. Every day is a little bit different, but some days and some weeks really stick out. One of those weeks that stick out is the week of November 2014. specifically November 17, 2014. That whole week, now as the head of or the supervisor of the major trial unit, I also have the duty sometimes to respond to homicide scenes. And on November 21st, and so here's some of the extraordinary things that may have happened that week, at least in my eyes. November 21st, responded to a scene of a quintuple murder. 5 people were shot and killed off of East 92nd in Cleveland, and that was a horrific scene. The next day, on November 22nd, I responded to an uncle and a nephew both being shot in the head with their car up on the tree lawn with the wheels still spinning as the perpetrator had run from the car, leaving the uncle and nephew on the tree lawn. That was early morning of the 22nd of Saturday. Later that day, a young man by the name of Tamir was playing at Cadell Rec Center and was shot by responding police officers. All extraordinary events that week. The most extraordinary of that week was the beginning of that week, in my point of view, because on November 17th, I sat across the table, myself and Mary McGrath, who was my colleague, and we were assigned the motion hearing, and I sat across the table from one Rickey Jackson. And there's a man who had been in prison for 39 years, and we were going to delve into a case that had been tried not once, not twice, 3 or 4 times actually. There was 4 trials back in the 70s, and we were taking another look at the evidence, and we decided we're in a great forum, Judge Richard McMonigal, and we had some great attorneys across the way as well. But as we coalesced, we decided, you know what, let's just make sure that everything gets put on, make sure that we have the opportunity to look at everything anew again, and that's what we set out to do. And we had a 2-day trial, or 2-day hearing, and at that opportunity, and as prosecutors, you got this dual role, right? You're advocates, but you're also ministers of justice. And we're very unique in that respect. And we take our position and our duties very seriously. As I sat across from Mr. Jackson, November 17th and November 18th, and I had an opportunity to actually examine in terms of cross-examination, came to the realization at some point, and throughout the hearing, and even sometimes leading up to it, because we were now involved in this extraordinary drama, right? We had drama later on that week, but this drama of a person who'd been in prison for 39 years and the person who basically testified against him and the Bridgman brothers 4 times, here we are, right? And this is real life drama, and here's a man that would come forward and say, what I said under oath those 4 times is not the truth. It's not. And we had to make sure, because again, we had 4 juries who heard all the evidence. We had to make sure that this was indeed accurate. There's a lot of times we have recantations, and there's other reasons for them. So we explored the evidence, and as I examined Mr. Jackson, and we talked, myself and Ms. McGrath, and it was really Ms. McGrath's case, and she would have been here, but she has some other obligations, unfortunately. We came to the realization, slowly and surely, that we had just lost confidence in the conviction that had been obtained by the state back in the 70s. As we saw what was going on, Mr. Vernon being examined, being cross-examined, understanding maybe his position, we decided to, and we were right up against the closing summation, we decided to take a break and go downstairs and present our feelings and our ethical obligations to our county prosecutor at the time. And we told them, we have lost confidence in this conviction. And we're not going to be able to try to protect this conviction or to uphold it. And at this time, after all the chips had fallen, it's time to do the right thing. And to his credit, Mr. McGinty then, we marched upstairs and we set out to do, or to right the wrong, set it right, and we went ahead and dismissed the case or acquiesced to the motion for new trial, and then the next day we dismissed the case. Again, in a career, and this might be all about me because this is all I know, and I just, again, shook Mr. Jackson's hand that day. It's what we set out to do as prosecutors. Again, we were advocates, but we're also ministers of justice, and we have that dual role. And we never forget that dual role that we have. And have the opportunity, again, this morning to shake Mr. Jackson's hand. And I am going to now turn it over to Mr. Jackson. He really needs no further introduction. He's been an extraordinary, I said it was an extraordinary week. He is an extraordinary person, having come out from that experience, and from what I can tell, at least outwardly, it's been a positive. He's been very positive about going forward and dealing with with things as we go forward. So, without further ado, I want to ask Mr. Jackson to come up and say a few words.
So I'm Mark Godsey from the Ohio Innocence Project, and we speak frequently, and Rickey prefers to do sort of a question and answer, and I think you're in for a treat. But first I want to say thank you to the Cuyahoga County Prosecutors, Mike O'Malley, for putting on this conference. He's right that he and his administration has come in and changed the culture in the office, and since he came in, Evan King was our client that they agreed out of the blue, we were completely surprised, to exonerate him. And then following up with Royal Saleh and Chris Miller. Back when Rickey Jackson's case was pending and we were representing him, the culture wasn't the same. And I had some prosecutors in Cuyahoga County early on in some of our earlier cases sort of repeat the mantra, you gotta fight for the conviction, you gotta protect the conviction. And I always say, well, why? But it sort of depended on who you got. And by the time we got to Rickey's case, as you heard, it was a witness who was recanting. And Mary reached out to me before the hearing and said, well, we can't find the witness. Will you give me the address? We want to interview them. And I've got to tell you of an experience I had similar to that in another county where the same request was made after a witness had recanted. And so we gave the address of this witness, and they called up the witness and they said, come down to the police department. We're going to interview you. We want to see if you're telling the truth. And they didn't interview him. They placed him under arrest for a long string of parking offenses and intimidated him from testifying. But so I was a little gun shy at that situation, but I had come to trust Mary from my circumstances working with her, and I knew she was going to do the right thing, and I knew she was going to try to be as objective as possible. So I said, okay. And that proved to be a good decision because we had the entire hearing, as was mentioned, 2 days long in the Rickey Jackson case, and Mary and Sal came back and agreed to drop the charges, and we were absolutely floored. So that's exactly the sort of mentality and objectivity that Sal described that we all need to have. Some of these situations set down the adversarial roles. So I want to start off, we'll cover different aspects of the story, but you've already learned that the conviction against Rickey was based on the testimony of Ed Vernon. At the time of his testimony, he was 13 years old. Rickey spent 40 years in prison with Ed Vernon as sort of his enemy, the man who had done this to him. And then Ed Vernon later recanted. After Rickey was freed, there was one thing he wanted to do, and I'll have him tell that story.
Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. It's indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here. If I may briefly, I would just like to expound what was said earlier about the culture being changed in Cuyahoga County's prosecutor's office. I've seen firsthand that culture being changed, and it is because of people having the courage to make change and go against the status quo. A big reason for why I'm standing here today is because people in that courtroom that day had the courage to step up and do the right thing. So thank you. Thank you for having that courage. What was your question?
After you got out, what the one thing you wanted to do?
Edward Vernon the young man that was the catalyst to all of this. It's now a middle-aged man, and one of the first things I wanted to do personally was to meet this man who I hadn't seen for almost 39 years. And a lot of people can't understand why, but it was important for me to meet him and to let him know that after all this time, I finally understood that he was as much a victim as we were in this whole thing. And I just wanted to meet him and let him know that I have forgiven him for what he had did. You know, not so much for his own behalf, but for my behalf. I've been granted such a wonderful opportunity at a second chance. And I wanted to utilize that opportunity. I had spent the better part of my life in prison being bitter, angry, resentful, hateful, mistrustful. And in that courtroom that day, I realized that I was given a great opportunity to still have a life and to still have opportunities and to move forward, and that's what I wanted to do. Forgiving Edward Vernon was a big part of that moving forward. He had lived in my mind, my heart, and in my conscience for 39 years, and I just couldn't carry him anymore, nor did I want to. And so I made arrangements through his pastor and through Mark, and we met at the church in private, and we just sat and talked, you know, like, wow, man, here we are. We were both kids. 39 years ago, we were both kids caught up in something that we truly didn't understand. And look at us now, you know. And so we sat and talked briefly, and it was time for me to go, and we stood up, and I embraced him. And I know people say this a lot when you feel like this weight is being lifted off of you after having carried a burden for so long. And as we embraced, I kind of felt that. I felt him grow lighter in my arms. And to me, that was the signal that this was over. It was finally over, and that I could really move on.
I think it's important to hear the story of your interrogation. Granted, this is 1975, but could you quickly tell what happened during the first days after you were arrested?
It was a common practice in the old county jail, particularly for myself, upon being arrested. After hours in the jail, prisoners would be taken downstairs, sometime in a bullpen, what they called the bullpen at the time, and they would be interrogated physically. You see an inmate being taken out, he comes back, he's swollen up, you know, it's obvious he's been beaten up. Well, I got an opportunity to have a firsthand look in the bullpen. They came and got me shortly after my arrest, took me downstairs, and I was called all kind of racial slurs, and I was going to die in an electric chair. All kind of verbal threats. I got downstairs to the bullpen. One of the methods they would use would be to handcuff me in a chair, sitting down with my hands behind my back, and one of the detectives would put on leather gloves or whatever kind of gloves he had at the time, and they would take this, I don't know if you guys remember the big, thick yellow phone books. I don't even know if they exist anymore, but they would take these big yellow phone books and they would put them on my face, and they would punch this phone book repeatedly. One time I passed out. Sometime they would put it on my torso around here and they would punch it, bruising my ribs, stomach problems, whatever. After this didn't work, they would just sit there and talk to me for hours on end. They had a written already confession. All I had to do was sign his confession, and I could go home because they knew the Bridgman brothers were really the masterminds of this whole ordeal. But, you know, I knew I was innocent. and no amount of beatings or coercion or anything else was going to make me confess to something I didn't do, something as heinous as this. I'm not a criminal, and I had no intentions of letting anyone make me a criminal.
Quickly, will you tell them how you were able to keep your humanity through the 39 years? What did you do in prison?
I did a lot. I studied a lot of religion, Buddhism, Catholicism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism. Books were my catalyst out of prison. They propelled me out of the prison gates, the prison doldrum, the everyday routine life in prison. That was my escape. I didn't covet anything in prison except books. You know, I got a lot of trouble about books. My cell was filled with books. And that was my vehicle of escape, you know. And when this first happened, my mom used to tell me all the time, she said, no matter what happens, you have to keep moving forward. Even when I was on death row, didn't even know if I was going to be alive tomorrow. She always insisted, you study, you read, you learn, you grow. You went in prison as Rickey Jackson, and that's who I expect you to come out as, only better. And so that's what I did. I studied, I learned, and I grew. I just tried to keep moving forward as best I could.
I just have two more questions. Can you describe the hearing in November of 2014 that Sal was talking about? What was going through your mind as Sal was cross-examining you? What was going through your mind during Ed Vernon's testimony? What was going through your mind when they came in and said they were dropping all the charges?
Again, it's that scenario of me and Edward in the church. And the only expression I could render was to exhale. You know, that whole week I ran a gamut of emotions. And quite frankly, at that point, I was just so tired. I was really tired, and I didn't know if this didn't work out, how much longer I could keep going. But just sitting there and being able to have that opportunity because of Mark and the Ohio Innocence Project, you know, for the first time in almost 4 decades, I really felt like I had a chance, and that's all I ever wanted, was a chance to tell my side of the story, which was the truth. And I got that opportunity, and again, to their credit, you know, the Cuyahoga County's Prosecutor's Office, they heard the truth and they believed it. But that day, just having those words uttered in that courtroom, all I could do was exhale. Really, that's all I could do.
I lied. I don't have you tell one more question. Talk about the day getting out with the senses and the you know, what it was like.
I'm sorry, y'all,
prison,
my nose.
39 years. What was it like to walk out into Cleveland Street?
Almost 4 decades in prison, you get used to sameness, because that's what prison is about, sameness every day. I mean, I could pretty much go through my entire day blindfolded and not miss a beat. All of a sudden, everything changes. Smells, sounds, movement. I mean, it was just too much, you know. That first day was just like a sensory overload, and I just stood. I remember standing on the courthouse steps and like, I just had this out-of-body experience, like I was just floating above the entire scene, and I could see Mark and the rest of his team, and just a lot of people, camera crews, and man, this is how it feels to be alive, you know? And I was just fortunate enough to have so many good people there at my side, and they kind of just guided me through my day, the rest of the day. But I was so elated, and just being happy doesn't even come close to, describing how I felt that day,
So last question. Tell them what you've been doing. You've been out almost 4 years. What's going on in your life now?
Well, I'm married. I have 3 wonderful, they're not wonderful, they sometimes, wonderful stepkids. And excuse my French, but I'm about to be an old ass dad. So, my first child, and so I'm just walking on cloud 9. I have a little business. I buy and sell houses. We have a nice living, and honestly, please don't feel sorry for me about what happened. I put it behind me, and I want everybody else to, what's important is that what we do going forward, I can't change what happened to me in the past. I've cried enough about it. I'm done with it. What's important is what's going forward. And again, I have a beautiful life. A little side story, if I may. The chief prosecutor in Cuyahoga County at the time we were going back for the hearing was Mr. McGinty. Rewind back to 1976, after I had been convicted, they give you what they call a post-sentence investigation to determine whether or not you're crazy enough to be executed. And so, Mr. McGinty, I was his very first client. And I guess it was part of this psych evaluation where they had me draw this picture. They said, just draw something. And so,
Just to be clear, McGinty was working then as an evaluator.
yes, I'm sorry, yeah. He was, I was his first client. He was an evaluator, his first week on the job. I'm his first client. And so I draw this picture for him, and it's a picture of a house, fence, 2 dogs, and some stick figures in the yard. Fast forward, 2014, we're in this hearing, and this gentleman, for some reason, is just sitting in the galleries, and he's just staring me down. Like, I can feel his eyes in the back of my head, right? I don't know it's Mr. McGinty at the time. He's just sitting there. He's just watching. He's just looking at me. And I was thinking that maybe it was a family member of the victims coming to protest the hearing or whatever. And so I saw him get up and talk to the prosecutor side of the table, and everyone approached the bench. And after all was said and done, he came to me and said, told me what I'm just relating to you. I know you don't remember me, but back in 1976, you were my first client. And a few months later, I ended up getting this picture that I had drawn from him. And this picture looks just like the house that I live in now. It's really remarkable how things just come full circle. But again, it was due to a lot of courageous people, on both sides of the table, who saw the right thing and pursued it. So again, thank you so much.